Welcome to episode 5 of Modern Monarch. I am your host, Eddie Mead, aka Elmer. Everything here that you hear that is not a quote from something is my opinion. I am an independent musician, songwriter, parapolitics researcher, esoterica enthusiast, and Montauk boy. This podcast will mainly cover such topics as mind control, ritual abuse, mental illness, substance abuse and addiction, music, sus Wisconsin, and more, viewed through a lens of dialectical materialism. I will maintain a balanced approach of presenting grounded research based on extensive reading and people's personal experiences. It will especially focus on a specific investigation of mine into decades-long countrywide conspiracies. As I explain, you will come to know why I began this podcast in the first place. In episode 3, we heard G.H. Estabrooks actually bragged, that he created Manchurian candidates with hypnosis. According to Colin A. Ross's book, The CIA Doctors, Human Rights Violations by American Psychiatrists, Estabrooks is alone in making that claim. Other MKUltra doctors were less forthcoming about their medical malpractice, some maintaining a code of silence. In Dr. Ewen Cameron's case, the Canadian Psychiatric Association would eventually claim that he was unwittingly working with and being funded by the CIA. Quoting from the CIA doctors, quote, "Despite the code of silence, and despite later claims by the Canadian Psychiatric Association that Dr. Cameron was unaware he was working for the CIA, see Appendix H, unwitting investigator status for Cameron is implausible for several reasons. He was far too politically connected to be unwitting. At various times, Dr. Cameron was president of the Quebec, Canadian, American, and World Psychiatric Associations, the Society of Biological Psychiatry, and the American Geriatric Society. Dr. Cameron was one of 4 co-founders of the World Psychiatric Association. Another was Dr. William Sargent, the foremost British authority on brainwashing. Many board members and presidents of the Society of Biological Psychiatry were LSD researchers, funded by the military or otherwise in the mind control network. In his obituary in the Canadian Psychiatric Association Journal, Cameron is eulogized as follows, quote within quote, "As a diligent seeker after new knowledge, a gifted author, a renowned administrator, an inspiring teacher, he brought, not only to his professional colleagues but also to the community at large, a wider and deeper understanding of the importance and significance of the emotional life of man." End quote within quote. End quote. His inspiring methods included overheating patients in an electrical cage to 102 degrees Fahrenheit, and forcing schizophrenic patients to lie naked in red light for 8 hours a day for periods of as long as 8 months. He was also very fond of putting patients into insulin comas for 2 to 5 hours per day, up to 50 days in a row. If you are aware of the term psychic driving, you have Ewen Cameron to thank. He developed the simple 2-step procedure. 1. Depattern a patient. Reduce them to a vegetative state is what that means. Through electroconvulsive shock, drug-induced sleep, and sensory deprivation. 2. Force them to listen to hundreds of hours of tape loops. He likely got some of his ideas from Nazi war criminals, since Cameron was part of the American psychiatric team at the Nuremberg military tribunals that conducted assessments of Germans such as Rudolf Hess. He had probably been made privy to the mescaline research done by Nazi psychiatrists in the death camps. A lot of information sharing went on between American and Nazi doctors after the war. We will be discussing a doctor who may have given the Americans advice and gotten some from them once he made his way to the United States. Since Cameron is considered the likeliest recruiter of paperclip doctors, the two could have even known each other. Some of their experimental methods were similar, at least. Before introducing you to that doctor, let's learn just a bit more about MKUltra at McGill University from Dr. Colin A. Ross's book. Quote, Dr. Donald Hebb, head of the Department of Psychology at McGill during the 1950s, received funding from Canada's Defence Research Board for experiments on sensory isolation. The network of doctors with CIA and military funding at McGill included Dr. Cameron, Dr. Hebb, Dr. Tyhurst, Dr. Whitcower, and Dr. Prince, and in addition Dr. Azima, was firmly established in the mind control network and using many of the same experimental procedures. LSD research was also done at McGill and Montreal General Hospital by Dr. J.H. Quastel. Any claim that Dr. Cameron's CIA funding was an anomaly or isolated incident is therefore incorrect. Medical experimentation by the Department of Psychiatry at McGill resulted in death, psychosis, vegetable states, organic brain damage, and permanent loss of memory, among other damages. It resulted in the creation of amnesia, identity disturbance, and depersonalization, among other dissociative symptoms. Dr. Ewen Cameron was the main figure in these activities. Throughout the 20th century, academic psychiatry provided no public commentary, ethical guidance, peer review, or moral oversight of any kind concerning mind control experimentation, despite the fact that the leading psychiatrists and medical schools were well funded by the CIA and military for mind control research. Mental patients, cancer patients, prisoners, and unwitting citizens were experimented on by mind control doctors at Yale, Harvard, McGill, Stanford, UCLA, and the other major universities. These human guinea pigs were never told that they were subjects in military and CIA mind control experiments, and they never gave informed consent. They received no systematic follow-up to document the harm done to them. The welfare of the human subjects was not a relevant variable in the academic equation. What counted for the psychiatrists, I think, was money, power, perks, academic advancement, and the thrill of being a spy doctor. End quote. Ewen Cameron, along with some of the Nazi doctors he likely chose to be brought over after World War II, are great examples of that kind of doctor the author describes that finds a thrill in sick experimentation with intelligence agency backing that allows them to advance their careers and feel like they can do anything they please. Let's turn our focus to McGill University's head of the Department of Psychology back then, Donald Hebb, who was mentioned at the beginning of the last excerpt. Dr. Donald Hebb's Wikipedia page says he has been described as the father of neural networks, and if you follow the footnote of that to the bottom, it continues, quote, he was also part of the now revealed secret agency that tested volunteer solitary confinement prisoners, putting them through tests that can cause madness and delusion that makes humans love inanimate objects and imagining fake objects and scenarios. End quote. His most famous theory is cell assembly theory, pretty much that synapses in the brain are strengthened with repeated activity. The theory has its limitations. It can lead to unhealthy forms of behavioral engineering, like using electric shocks to discourage certain behaviors. I will now read an article from The Republican, a Springfield, Massachusetts newspaper, published on November 3rd, 1996. 2 votes that count Tuesday. Springfield. Charles Mayer is 65. Brian Cleary, 71. On Tuesday, these 2 new citizens, sworn in within the past year, get to do something they've never done before. Cast a vote for president. It's quite exciting, really, Mayer says. Sometimes I hear people grumbling about the choices, but my thought was always, we have a choice. That's no small thing. Mayer is Vice President of Academic Affairs and Professor of Business at American International College. He came here from Halifax, Nova Scotia, where he spent the first half of his working life as a banker. He caught the academic bug while an adjunct professor at St. Mary's College in Halifax. I loved working with students, he says. I thought it would be a good life. So Mayer decided to switch careers. 20 years ago, he came to the University of Massachusetts to complete his doctorate. The father of 5 planned to stay 3 years and return home. He and his family liked it too much here. They stayed. Mayer joined the AIC faculty in 1979. We get students from all over the world, and I cannot help but be touched by the awe these students have for the freedoms we have in this country, he says. They come from countries where freedom is a fight every day. They know all about the importance of one man, one vote. They know how good it is here. For many years, Mayer and his wife Jo, a registered nurse at Municipal Hospital, thought about becoming citizens. They have always been active in the community, givers, not takers. But 2 of their children attended college in Canada, so it was advantageous to keep their Canadian citizenship. It really came down to that I should be a citizen because I wanted to vote, Mayer says. I wanted that privilege. Brian Cleary was an apprentice tea blender in East London when World War II broke out. He joined the Royal Navy and spent 4 years on a minesweeper, including duty during D-Day. After the war, he went to school. Upon graduation, he taught at the Royal Windsor Grammar School before emigrating to Canada, eventually working as an assistant professor in psychology and education at McGill University in Montreal. One summer, Cleary taught a course at AIC. He met Art Bertrand. They both had the desire to work with children with learning disabilities. They decided they wanted to found a center on campus to do so. The administration told me they couldn't hire me full-time to do that, so they named me Director of Secondary Education and gave Art and myself the 3rd floor in an old wooden building to work with children, Cleary says. That was 28 years ago. Eventually he found a benefactor in Curtis Blake, who funded the Curtis Blake Center, the first facility in the nation devoted to diagnosing and treating children and adults with learning disorders. They also found a friend in former Congressman Edward Boland. I'd vote for those 2 guys for president, says Cleary, now director of the Curtis Blake Center and professor of education. Curtis Blake told me if the center didn't work out, he'd turn the place into another Friendly's. A great guy. My introduction to American politics was Eddie Boland. He's a real man of his word and did a lot for us. Cleary finally became a citizen. I should have done it much sooner, I know. Simply because he doesn't think a person should receive the benefits a government offers unless he or she is a citizen. I always wanted to vote, he says. I can't think of why anybody wouldn't want to. End quote. You may remember Dr. Brian Cleary as the Cessna-flying, video camera-using professor from the Curtis Blake Learning Services spoken of in episode 3. Yes, before his job there, he worked with infamous MK Ultra doctors at McGill University in Montreal. I just wanted to get that information out at the beginning of this show to provide more evidence of why I think that the Curtis Blake Child Development Center and Curtis Blake Day School are sus, beyond the fact that they were run by American International College, or AIC, which I will continue to theorize could be in cahoots with the CIA. Previous episodes will reveal to you why, and so will future ones. The way I am going to have to present a lot of information to you is not necessarily linear, but it will work similarly to the neural networks Dr. Cleary's coworker, Donald Hebb, helped discover. We are unraveling a gigantic mess of a web. You will keep hearing names of people, locations, methods, ideas, and more repeated throughout this podcast. Each reminder of them will hopefully help strengthen the connections between those things that I am not able to neatly cover on a linear timeline. With that preface now stated, let's explore a few more of the many newspaper clippings I have compiled that are about the Curtis Blake Learning Services. First, from Springfield's The Morning Union newspaper on Friday, February 25th, 1983. Quote, Century-old AIC launches first doctoral program by Phyllis Andreoni, union staff. American International College in Springfield has launched the first doctoral program in the college's nearly 100-year history, AIC President Harry J. Corniotes announced Thursday. In an exclusive interview with the Morning Union, Corniotes and other top AIC officials, along with Curtis L. Blake, co-founder of the Friendly Ice Cream Corp. And longtime AIC benefactor, described the doctoral program in educational psychology, which will place special emphasis on learning disabilities. Students will be trained as practitioners in the science of child therapy and as researchers. The program is a natural outgrowth of activities at the Curtis L. Blake Child Development Center, which opened in 1974 and has received national attention, Corniotes said. It will offer a number of Ethel S. Blake Fellowships, each worth $1,500, to students showing special qualities and aptitudes in psychology and education. The fellowships will be given in memory of Curtis Blake's mother, who was born the same year AIC was founded, 1885, and who died recently at age 97. This is a very happy story, a philanthropic gesture that turned out to exceed my expectations, said Curtis Blake. The Curtis Blake Center is my greatest philanthropic interest. Many people are in a position to give away money, but have the problem of finding good recipients, one who will do what is expected with the gift. I am very pleased with this and will maintain constant involvement as long as I live. It's nice to find a place to help that does so well with what you give. Corniotes said there is tremendous need for the program as increased emphasis is placed on helping disabled children overcome their handicaps and lead productive, self-fulfilling lives. The college intends to meet that need by producing experts who will both work with children directly and also generate research aimed at producing answers to the perplexing problems faced by the disabled child, he said. Dr. Richard C. Sprinthall, AIC Director of Graduate Studies in Psychology and an author whose work has been widely adopted, said the center, under the leadership of Professors Paul Quinlan and Brian Cleary, co-directors, has worked with virtually every school system in Western Massachusetts and many others through New England, giving diagnostic and counseling assistance. About 100 AIC undergraduates with learning disabilities receive supportive services, not to be confused with remedial work, while enrolled in regular college courses. More than 1,000 teachers and administrators from across the country have participated in workshops and other programs conducted by the center's staff. In 1981, the center opened the Curtis Blake Day School at the former grammar school on Stony Hill Road in Wilbraham. Cleary said about 8 to 15% of the population has dyslexia, a reading problem in which printed material is received by the brain differently from the way it is written. About 80% of the children we see have a reading disability, he said. Blake said, One of the things that makes the center and its programs so wonderful is that all of these dedicated, talented people have been there since 1968 or 1969, when work on learning disabilities first began at AIC. That's continuity. It brings us all a tremendous amount of satisfaction and joy. End quote. Next, in the Morning Union on June 5th, 1983, quote, new AIC doctoral program to begin with 15 members. American International College in Springfield has accepted its charter class for the new doctoral program in education, which begins in September. A select group of 15 scholars and practitioners will participate in the new program, the first doctoral program in the college's history. The candidates hold positions ranging from Director of Guidance Services in Holyoke and Director of Special Education in Worcester to School Psychology in New York. Dr. Richard C. Sprinthall will direct the program, designed to provide professional preparation with special emphasis on learning disabilities. The program's 4 major components focus on psychology, education, learning disabilities, and the dissertation. Through the Curtis L. Blake Child Development Center, the AIC Graduate Department of Psychology maintains a laboratory training center. End quote. I still have many more newspaper clippings about the Curtis Blake Child Development Center and Curtis Blake Day School that I will pepper into future episodes to continue elaborating on the gut feeling I have about sketchy activity there. I meant to get to AIC President Harry Coniotes today, who we learned was a member of the Royal Order of Jesters, but that deserves its own show, which will come soon enough. Anyway, another newspaper clipping now. Quote, Learning Disabilities Talk. Drake D. Duane, a specialist in learning disabilities, will speak at American International College Saturday at 10:15 a.m. An associate professor of neurology at the Mayo Medical School in Rochester, Minnesota, Duane will discuss evidence for right and left hemispheric lateralization in the brain. For more information, contact Brian Cleary at AIC's Curtis Blake Child Development Center. End quote. After reading about the terrible ways that children were experimented on by MK Ultra doctors at the behest of the Central Intelligence Agency and NASA, among others, and taking into account the very possible working experiences between AIC Professor Brian Cleary and CIA-funded brainwashing doctors like Ewen Cameron at McGill University, who also trained others, their interest in the brains of learning disabled children becomes spookier. There was a laboratory, a full videotaped facility, one-way mirrors, one-on-one teaching by special teachers with only 3 college credits in learning disability studies, trying out new methods treating those children. I will continue expanding on my theories that sus stuff could have occurred at the Curtis Blake Learning Services and AIC. However, we will move on to a different school with a different doctor and unique methods. After one more excerpt from Colin A. Ross's The CIA Doctors, Human Rights Violations by American Psychiatrists. Quote, the research described by Dr. Gesticker in MK Ultra Subproject 62, conducted at the National Institutes of Health by Dr. Maitland Baldwin, a neurosurgeon. Documents describe Dr. Baldwin's interest in sensory isolation experiments, and a subproject status report states that, quote within quote, certain kinds of radiofrequency energy have been found to affect reversible neurological changes in chimpanzees, end quote within quote. In the publication resulting from Subproject 62, entitled Effects of Radiofrequency Energy on Primate Cerebral Activity, Baldwin, Bach, and Lewis thank the Naval Research Laboratory and Rome Air Force Base for supplying equipment used to generate the radio waves. Dr. Baldwin also did a study in which he gave LSD to monkeys. In the experiment, control monkeys were compared to monkeys who had their temporal lobes removed surgically. Based on the responses of the 2 groups of monkeys to LSD, Dr. Baldwin concluded that the temporal lobes must be in place for monkeys to experience the effect of LSD. The LSD used by Dr. Baldwin was supplied by Sandoz Laboratories. Lee and Baldwin described a technique for implanting electrodes in the human brain. At that point in time, they had implanted electrodes in the brains of 30 people over a 5-year period. Penfield and Baldwin performed a series of temporal lobectomies at the Montreal Neurological Institute and McGill University during the same time period that Dr. Ewen Cameron, contractor on MKUltra Subproject 68, was the chairman of the Department of Psychiatry at McGill, and Dr. James Tyhurst of McGill was attending Bluebird and Artichoke meetings in Montreal. See Chapter 12 for information on other CIA and military contracts at McGill. End quote. Those experiments remind me of the methods of Dr. Luis de Souza, who is the subject of the many newspaper clippings we are about to read. Let's get started by checking out the front page of the Jackson County Floridian, a Marianna, Florida newspaper from Wednesday, December 27, 1961. Quote, FSB psychiatrist uses electroencephalograph. Dr. Luis Souza, resident psychiatrist, hopes to make the Florida School for Boys at Marianna a world center for research in scientific treatment of delinquency. As a first step in that direction, he has acquired a machine for measuring brain waves. Known as an electroencephalograph, the device would have cost about $3,000 purchased new. Dr. Souza was able to get an old one through Jackson County Hospital, however, at a very little cost to the school. Since he is a qualified EEG technician, he installed it himself. Already, Dr. Souza has sent tracings from his most unusual cases to colleagues at Prager Mental Hospital in Vienna, Austria, and at state institutions in San Diego and San Francisco, California. End quote. Whoa, as I'm reading this for the recording, I'm just thinking, back in the 60s, was there anything MKUltra related going on down in California, especially San Francisco? I think listeners that are anointed and are into parapolitics can answer that for themselves. Yes. Oh, man. Anyhow, continuing this newspaper article, quote, these, he said, are men with more than 20 years' experience in psychiatry. Dr. Kuhner of Vienna is a former teacher of Dr. Souza's and an author of the sound wave therapy being used there. This is very helpful, Dr. Souza said, to have another opinion or to have confirmation of the diagnosis. Soon he hopes to have a worldwide program of interchange set up between psychiatrists treating youngsters in trouble. Most of his colleagues will be in European countries. Very few state training schools in the United States have the equipment and personnel to carry out the kind of research he has in mind for the Florida institution. How can the knowledge of a fully qualified psychiatrist help boys with behavior problems? Dr. Souza is demonstrating this vividly with 50 boys he is treating on an outpatient basis at Pierce Hall on the boys' school campus. Before a boy can profit from the general training program, he said, the boy must be in condition in which he can receive instruction and guidance. This means he must be mentally, emotionally, and physically fit. The psychiatrist has discovered some rather shocking things about youngsters being received at the school. More than 60% are anemic when they arrive. While the normal hemoglobin count is 14.5, theirs doesn't reach the bare minimum of 11. A special high-protein diet prescribed by Dr. Souza and prepared in the FSB dining hall helps to correct this. With the EEG machine, which he was able to use at the hospital before moving it to Pierce Hall, he has made another discovery which will probably be of widespread scientific interest. Every boy he has tested who has been committed the second or third time actually shows some actual abnormal condition of the brain. It is a matter of physical damage or impairment. First students started in the Pierce Hall program, November 3rd. Each will undergo treatment for a few minutes every day over a period of 60 days, after which Dr. Souza will check on them weekly. Every 15 days, Dr. Souza runs a new EEG test on each patient to see if brain waves are becoming more nearly normal. In those who have passed the first 15-day period, Dr. Souza says he has observed just what he expected. They have shown 45% improvement. By the second test, he hopes to raise the degree of improvement to 80%. His success, obviously, will be watched for every new glimmer of hope, not only by other scientists, but also by everyone who wants to see disturbed children given a chance to become good citizens. End quote. Please allow me to quickly explain a few things before we continue meeting Dr. Souza. We are now getting into background information for the story of the Project Monarch survivor I will be interviewing. It is the first of many stories we will hear from the survivors themselves, and I'm very honored to be able to know them, to be trusted to share their stories with all of you, and to help them in any way I can. The Florida School for Boys that we are learning about is also known as the Dozier School for Boys. The next episode will almost completely be about Dozier, because it deserves at least one full episode of its own. Its history is not discussed enough, and it will be a devastatingly disturbing listen, unfortunately, because over the 111 years it operated, there was near constant horrible abuse and many deaths. The Marshall Project has an article about the Florida School for Boys, and it also talks about the Okeechobee School for Boys, which comes up in survivor stories as well. It states that at least 34 boys who stayed at Dozier and another 16 sent to Okeechobee ended up on Florida's death row. At least 19 others, possibly many more, went to prison for murder. And combined, men who attended these schools have killed at least 114 people. So the so-called promising results of Souza's tests definitely did not help, especially when combined with the horrible things that happened to kids there, which we will be discussing in the next episode. My friend Clouds found a book titled Starfire Disclosure by Anna Starfire, a survivor of MKUltra experiments in Florida. I will insert an excerpt here to give you an idea of what was really going on at the Dozier School for Boys, including with Dr. Souza. Then, after we finish reading about him, I will let Clouds enlighten you to a much further, more disturbing degree. The content of the Starfire Disclosure book paints us a very dark and different picture of what we are currently covering. Here is an excerpt. Quote,
"In my state of Florida, the reform school experiments were planned out using highly controlled populations from mostly poor black and white families. The goal was to implant the kids, treat them with ABA, and release them tagged into the culture. The watchers could follow their movements and struggles. We all had tracking chips and crystals put inside our skulls, ears, and eyes with frontal lobe incisions. Students could be retrained using mind control methods like ours. Even worse, I believe that staff at Dozier implanted the boys with advanced materials and radio chips during secret brain surgeries. Our state offered thousands of children for experimental labs. They literally tracked and abducted thousands of children and surgically altered them in the CIA-friendly hospitals. There is a direct connection between these agencies. The Department of Education and the Florida Boys Reform System shared a database. For over 50 years, the state-run homes in Florida were viewed as experimental labs full of children. Florida was one of the places the government relocated rocket scientists. They told absolutely nobody. They were connected to the Nazis, and they brought the recipes to Florida in the 1950s and 60s.
End quote. Now, from page 3 of the Tallahassee Democrat, Friday, March 23rd, 1962. 62 boys get sound wave treatments. Mariana. 62 students at Florida School for Boys here have completed 60 days of treatment under the sound wave therapy, a new approach to handling emotionally disturbed boys. Results correspond to what Dr. Luis Souza, resident psychiatrist, predicted. It is now considered that the treatment has passed its first test, as an average improvement of 79% is shown in mental and physical conditions. With none, said Dr. Souza, has there been complete failure. Electroencephalograph tracings and hemoglobin charts tell the story of these boys' progress. The machine records in 8 channels the electrical discharges from 8 different areas of the brain. Dr. Souza measures changes in the pattern the EEG machine recorded at 15-day intervals. End quote. This next one is from the front page of the Jackson County Floridian, published on Saturday, April 28, 1962. Quote, unusual case. FSB doctor treating conversion hysteria. A 17-year-old boy suffering from a serious visual defect, not because anything is wrong with his eyes, but because the seeing areas of his brain do not function properly, is regaining his sight at the Florida School for Boys at Mariana. End quote. Wait. I was debating including an article about the vision tests that were going on at the Curtis Blake School, but I am saving it for for another episode, and I'm not going to go back and read it now because you will hear it in the future, but just reading over this while recording, I guess I'm putting little things together that I hadn't until now. This is why you always gotta read and reread and think about things from all angles. Anyways, continuing with this article now. Quote, lightweight proteins and ultrasonic wave treatment administered by Dr. Luis Souza, resident psychiatrist, are working the near miracle. When the boy was referred to Dr. Souza on February 13th, the psychiatrist diagnosed his case as, quote, within quote, conversion hysteria, end quote, within quote. It was the first such case he had encountered at the boys' school, and one so rare that in private practice he has seen only 10 or 12. As part of the diagnosis, the psychiatrist reported that the patient suffered from, quote within quote, psychic and sensory leukemia amnesia, end quote within quote. That is, he had only islands of memory. He could remember some events, but not others. Certain experiences simply were not recorded in the filing system of the brain. A Mariana optometrist tested the boy's eyes and found his sight to be 20/80, or only 1/4 normal. Yet glasses would not help, because glasses could only correct defects in the eyes themselves. Lenses and retinas, the optometrist found, were doing their jobs. The breakdown occurred between the focus of light on the back of the eye and the boy's perception of it as a picture. End quote. I'm stopping again because it sounds a lot like this boy had dissociative identity disorder. It sounds like he couldn't remember some things because he would go into states of mind, different alters. And it is known that vision can change between alters that you have, the strength or weakness of your vision. Anyways, continuing again, quote, laboratory tests showed generally poor nutrition. As an aside, Dr. Souza noted that most students are found to be anemic upon arrival at the school and are affected in different ways depending upon their constitution and background. Hemoglobin content in the blood, which should be at least 14%, was only 10.8%. All 8 channels of the electroencephalograph recorded abnormal brainwaves. Dr. Souza immediately placed the boy on a diet high in lightweight proteins. Lightweight, he explained, refers to the basic molecular structure of the food, which makes it easier for the brain to use. The advantage of proteins in the weight range below 110,000 was discovered by Dr. Souza's former teacher, Dr. Sigmund Kuhner of Vienna. Students under Dr. Souza's care received their lightweight proteins via a special product of the FSB kitchens containing bone marrow and known by the boys as, quote within quote, Souza soup, end quote within quote. Turn to Dr. page 2, end quote. We will quit that article right there. A lot of interesting stuff in there. I haven't been able to find out anything at all about Dr. Souza's former teacher, Dr. Kuhner, in Vienna, Austria. But that is something that, of course, I will continue looking into. Have to follow every little thread you can. We stopped that article right there because I think we should find out what this Souza soup is. I first heard of it in Facebook comments by former students of the school that were treated by Souza. They did not seem to be recalling him or his treatment of them fondly, nor did they seem to enjoy the soup, but their comments remained rather cryptic. An article in the Miami Herald, published on Sunday 19th, 1964, sort of solves the mystery soup question for us. Quote, a recipe for runaway teens, Souza soup, one of a series, by Joy Reese Shaw, Herald staff writer. Mariana. It was after midnight. The telephone jangled raucously in the cottage of David Walters, superintendent of Florida School for Boys. Its message was not a new one. Runaway. Runaways, from home, from school, from detention, from city to city and state to state, are a major national headache in the field of juvenile delinquency. A Uruguayan psychiatrist is researching the subject in Mariana and feels he's found a major answer. And not only the cause, but the cure. They call it Souza's soup. The man is tall, lanky Dr. Luis de Souza, and his project is a continuation and follow-up of research made by the German psychiatrist Dr. Siegfried Kröner, with whom Dr. Souza worked for more than 5 years. End quote. German psychiatrist, eh? All right, continuing now. Quote, "There are various causes of runaways," Dr. Souza stressed, "and some lie deeply embedded in a child's past as well as his present. But one lies in starved brain cells, he firmly feels. The runaway problem, third nationally only to that of burglary and larceny, is not so simple a matter as Tom Sawyer-type adventure. In Florida alone last year, 4,048 children ran away from home. In Dade, there was 179 local runaways. These are only those which cleared through the juvenile courts of the state. A total of 1,025 left the state. Of these, 726 ran to another county. The rest ran away within their counties. Why? The boy whose runaway jangled over the phone at Mariana was a Dade County youth, now 17. It was his third runaway from the state school. Committed for breaking and entering and theft, the boy had been found living in a car parked near a South Dade canal. His parents were divorced, and his mother's yearly income was listed as approximately $1,000. A note in his record from a Dade social worker outlined the difficulty being encountered in trying to counsel with the migrant mother. It said in substance, "The closest we came to meeting her was when she called and indicated she'd be watching TV through the front display window of an appliance store in Homestead." In June, Bill had run away from Mariana, taken a state truck and gone to Panama City. He abandoned the truck and stole a 25-foot cabin cruiser. In October, he returned hungry and bedraggled and turned himself in. He'd caught up with his mother for a while in Arizona, he said. On March 29th, he ran away again, took another car in Panama City. The sheriff picked him up. Yet on March 26th, only 3 days earlier, he'd been called in at Mariana for a report preparatory to release and going home. Why did he run away the second time? Was he trying to foul up his record, knowing otherwise he'd be released? Was he afraid to go? If so, then why the third time? Whatever the cause, Superintendent Walters observed quietly, "Bill's a real nice kid. That's the tragedy of it." Bill is a piker at running away compared with some kids. One 17-year-old youth at Mariana had run away from home more than 50 times since he was 5 years old. He ran away in sun or rain, summer or winter. It made no difference, Dr. Souza smiled. He ran away at Mariana too. Dr. Souza's diagnosis? Mental impairment with emotional conversion hysteria. Dr. Souza worked in Vienna with Dr. Kruner, who pioneered in ultrasonic sound therapy and in research of light protein associated with mental impairment due to low gasometric capacity of the hemoglobin, he explained. Excited about the findings, Dr. Souza has continued research in the same field, concentrating on the juvenile defender. Basically, his theory is that in many instances the blood does not transport sufficient oxygen to the blood cells and behavioral disorders develop. Sometimes a quick, impulsive action with little or no judgment is triggered, he feels. When kids do not get enough protein, the hemoglobin falls down and the brain cells do not receive enough oxygen, he pointed out. Many children do not eat properly, he stated. His answer? Souza's soup, a specialty prepared mixture of concentrated protein prepared from red bone marrow. Each child under treatment receives 8 ounces a day. Of 2,200 boys tested, he said 1,800 showed the problem and 70% improved with treatment. The critical age is 11 to 21, and proper diet control must be kept for at least 2 years. I am, of course, hampered by the length of my stay here. Dr. Souza gives to boys whose behavior indicates they need help a neurological examination, laboratory studies, and electroencephalograph. He establishes normal oxygen capacity transmission at 9.5, When he finds less than 7.5, he puts the youth under treatment. One of Dr. Souza's proudest successes is now his office boy and plans to join the Air Force. He once had a seizure so severe we had to put him in a straitjacket for 12 hours, the doctor said. His improvement has been 100% in memory, ambition, behavior, in every way. One of Dr. Souza's patients is a boy whose grandfather was a murderer and whose father was a murderer. His father had diabetes, an equally significant factor in Dr. Souza's studies. He grew up without inhibitions, with uncontrolled impulses, particularly over the sex sphere. Sometimes he had hysterical outbursts with loss of consciousness for 30 or more hours. The last crises lasted 22, Dr. Souza reported. He was moody, sulky, irritable, behaved as a child when he doesn't get his way. His case history noted, no doubt familial factors play a striking role in Johnny's condition. Mild disorder of personality, evidently hereditary in origin, with deficient guidance since childhood, and will present very difficult management in correctional institution. Dr. Souza tested the boy, found what he was looking for, and has achieved remarkable improvement. In examining one child who had repeated his grade 3 times and was troubled with bad dreams, Dr. Souza found the optic nerve affected and the same oxygen deficiency. One 10-year-old boy, a runaway who had taken his father's company car and driven out of state, had severe temper tantrums and rebellious behavior at Mariana. The child was adopted. His history showed he had been hit on the head with a croquet mallet. But Dr. Souza felt there was more. He finally learned that one relative had died in a mental hospital, apparently of progressive syphilis, again highly significant to the doctor's findings. Many complicated factors enter the problem of the runaway and other misbehavior. But Dr. Souza feels the wavy, erratic lines on the great white charts which roll through the electroencephalograph machines at Mariana trace out one answer. As he says in the heavy accent of his heritage, sometimes I have myself a big surprise, and someday he hopes to publish them. End quote. Wow. Please note the reference to his accent. That will be important. We should note that he's talking about kids that have mild disorders of personality. He has an office boy who he did work on, and now the office boy is going to join the Air Force, I guess. He's messing with kids' vision because they have bad dreams. Gosh, I wonder why they have bad dreams. Especially when you learn more about the school that they are stuck at. In episode 3, I mentioned that the boys at Dozier endured brutal beatings, and one employee of the school who was especially cruel was a one-armed man named Troy Tidwell. The next show will include him, and more of the deposition we are about to hear will be played. This is Tidwell answering questions about Dr. Souza.
Well, when we were discussing earlier, you said that there was Mr. Curry and Dr. Souza.
Yeah.
Dr. Souza was a psychiatrist?
He had a little office, I think, up at Pierce Hall. And
that's before...
He was a psychiatrist.
Was that before Pierce Hall was used for solitary confinement?
It was all built for a cottage and the lockups. And then up front, it had a lobby up there, and then I think Dr. Souza had a little office up there. I never did go in his office up there, but
But was his office located in the building at the time that it was being used for solitary confinement?
Yes.
So they had a psychiatrist in the solitary confinement facility.
Yeah.
And did Dr. Souza prescribe drugs for the children? Did he medicate kids?
Not drugs to my knowledge, but soup. Special soup made up for the boys.
What does that mean, special soup?
I don't know.
Was it special soup that would change their conduct, or was it some kind of soup that had medication in it?
It seemed to help those who had problems.
Where would one be fed the soup? Where did he give these boys soup?
I would think it was at his office. I'm not positive on that.
I think we're on a different wavelength. When you said soup, I'm envisioning somebody being served a bowl and eating soup. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
So he would give them, is a fair term, spiked soup? It had something in it?
I don't know that, but whatever it was supposed to help their behavior. One of the things that was told.
And did it change their behavior?
I don't know.
Do you know who it was that got the soup?
No.
How did you even learn that the soup was being given to boys?
Discussion among the staff.
Well, tell me about the discussion. What were they saying
Just
about the...
kind of laughing and talking about that soup that Dr. Souza was giving the boys.
So Dr. Souza was the psychiatrist that, other than soup, you're unaware of any medications that he was giving boys?
No.
And as I said earlier, it may not surprise you to find out that his soup and the brain experiments on these adolescent runaways and wrongdoers, I guess you could say, didn't stop them from becoming death row inmates, murderers, in probably a larger percentage than a lot of other places. But not that his crazy bullshit was the only thing they were experiencing, but on top of everything else, this is your psychiatrist, and he's just having his way with you in terms of messing with your brain, doing whatever he pleases. It's just horrible. Anyways, back to what I have planned. Our next newspaper clipping is from the Jackson County Floridian and was published on Tuesday, October 27th, 1964. Quote, Dr. Souza ends special course at U of Miami. Dr. Luis de Souza, resident psychiatrist at the Florida School for Boys, has returned from Miami where he attended an intensive postgraduate course, the University of Miami School of Medicine. The course from August 3rd through October 20th dealt with surgery, obstetrics, pediatrics, basic sciences, and internal medicine. He also attended the 4th Inter-American Conference on Toxicology and Occupational Medicine, conducted by the University of Miami School of Medicine August 24th to 27th. While in Miami, Dr. Souza was named by Mayor Robert King High a, quote, within quote, distinguished visitor of the city of Miami, end quote, within quote, end quote. distinguished visitor of the city of Miami, would in just a few years be fleeing back to South America. Let's find out why through reading a few articles from newspapers in New Jersey, where Souza relocated after spending the early to mid-1960s as the resident psychiatrist of the Florida School for Boys. What was he up to in New Jersey? We will begin with an article from the Patterson Evening News published Saturday, July 8, 1967. Quote, "Study shows drug habit inheritable. There is a tendency towards inheriting a drive for addictive drugs according to the first results of a study underway at St. Dismas Hospital for Drug Addiction. The retired Reverend Monsignor William N. Wall, director of the Drug Addiction Treatment Center, said the studies are being conducted at St. Dismas by Dr. Luis Souza of Uruguay, in operation with St. Dismas's medical director, Dr. David I. Canavan. Blood samples from addicts and their parents revealed a bend toward addiction in 85% of the addicts and their parents. Monsignor Wall explained that 2 pairs of the 23 pairs of chromosomes in the human system show a definite clumping in addicts and their non-addict parents. These are the 11th and 19th chromosomes, which, with others, affect development of the central nervous system. Not insurmountable. Monsignor Wall, who is also director of the Mount Carmel Guild Alcoholic Treatment Center, stressed that the bent towards addiction revealed thus far is not so compelling as to be insurmountable. The decay of morality in society, starting at the top, and the lack of family-oriented upbringing are stronger factors causing addiction than chromosome makeup, the Monsignor said. Of greatest promise is the use of the chromosome condition to detect a propensity for addiction in youngsters before they reach the age of trying drugs. Monsignor Wall said he could take samples from pre-high school children and detect a body chemistry makeup that would show a bent towards addiction. To study monkeys. The experiments carried on at St. Dismas, which is a non-government supported treatment center, are financed by the center. Presently, rabbits are being studied, with monkeys to be used next. Experimentation shows that 1 injection of heroin, the most used drug by addicts here, into a rabbit causes clumping of its chromosomes, which are related in activity to the 11th and 19th chromosomes in humans. Results of the study will be shared with other agencies, city, state, and federal, interested in them, Monsignor said. Dr. Souza has been invited to submit results of the study to the 2nd Oxford Chromosomal Conference at Magdalena College, England, in September. End quote. Just a year earlier, in spring of 1966, Souza's wife and daughter were featured in separate news articles for different reasons back down in Marianna, Florida. His wife received a certificate for a fitness class, and his daughter was part of a school prayer, so is nothing negative reported. Despite their life seemingly going smoothly down in Florida, they left for New Jersey for some reason that I have not been able to ascertain as of yet. Anyway, there are a few articles from 1967 and 1968 about Souza taking part in debates about whether marijuana is harmful or not. He was avidly against marijuana use. It should be noted that marijuana is widely considered by survivors and even experts of mind control to be helpful in recovering memories after going through programming. Now, as an example, this article from the Patterson Evening News, Friday, February 2nd, 1968, will give you an idea of some of the things he was going around saying about marijuana to create a scare. Quote, "Pot boils in Bergen drug debate," by Al Post. Teaneck. Opinions on pot simmered for 90 minutes Thursday afternoon as 2 narcotic experts from Bergen and Passaic counties argued the values of a new conditional legalization of marijuana versus the current ban on the sale and use of the drug. Dr. Paul Benedict, chief of narcotics clinic at Bergen Pines of Paramus, told several hundred students at Teaneck High School that he favored a reappraisal of the current drug laws that would permit the sale of mild drugs and curtail the spread of strong alcohol. Dr. Benedict asked that a federal commission make the study and then turn its information over to congressional leaders for change in the law. Let's face facts, Dr. Benedict declared. Nicotine can be fatal, and alcohol is the most dangerous drug consumed by humans. Neither of these has been declared illegal to buy, sell, or use. Let's make the laws banning certain drugs relevant to their harmfulness on the human body. Dr. George Gubar, psychologist at St. Dismas Hospital in Paterson, countered by saying that the ban on marijuana should remain because, 1, it can cause lasting physical damage to users by altering and deforming their chromosomes, and unfortunately the harmful effects of the drug are transmitted to the following generations. 2, its use can act as an entree into the drug world, thus enticing users to experiment with drugs to get new highs. 3, psychic dependence on the drug may lead to extreme lethargy and self-neglect. Preoccupation with the use of marijuana may reach such a point it would preclude constructive activity. Guests of club. The 2 narcotic experts were invited to the school as guests of a newly formed club named Forum on American Problems. Mrs. Marion Shelby, an English teacher at the school, served as moderator of the discussion, aided by Peter Colbert, president of the club. In his opening statement, Dr. Benedict declared that he once was a moderate smoker, but had stopped this habit, a pack a day, because of the poison of nicotine. He also claims that although he is a moderate drinker of alcohol, he has found that excessive drinking of alcohol in the United States is held to be responsible for about half of the fatal car accidents and an equal amount of physical assaults on police record books. In countries such as France, where liquor is widely consumed, alcoholism and diseases related to its use are the 4th leading cause of death. Can lead to killing. The use of cocaine or LSD can spur its users to kill, Dr. Benedict said, but the worst that can be said of using marijuana is that it makes you withdrawn or silly. End quote here. Yeah, you use LSD to program people to kill and they will become killers, Dr. Benedict. Wow. And don't you love that, this club of rich fucks is named Forum on American Problems? Scratch that last part, the Forum of American Problems part. Continuing, quote, as for the claim that marijuana leads to heroin, Dr. Benedict said, more addicts start by using alcohol or cough medicine. While I myself do not use marijuana, Dr. Benedict declared, I do think we ought to severely reassess our laws. Dr. Gubar chided Dr. Benedict by saying, if alcohol is that bad, then why should you be out lecturing and working for the prohibition of alcohol and not the legalization of marijuana? Noisy minority. Dr. Gubar said, it is estimated that 0.5% of the people in the United States have abused drugs. But this small percentage shouts to the heavens in praise of the drugs, while the remaining 99.5% sit quietly. One day we may wake up and find we have lost the ball game. My son, who is currently studying at a New Jersey college, said there is a strong rumor circulating that a well-known tobacco company in the United States has purchased a large tract of land in Mexico for the future cultivation of marijuana, Dr. Gubar said. It is a well-known fact, he continued, that the Mexicans who grow marijuana do not smoke it. They say it is something smoked by witches and vampires. To strengthen his argument, Dr. Gubar declared that Dr. Luis Souza of St. Dismas Narcotic Hospital recently presented his findings to the Bergen County Narcotic Addiction and Drug Abuse Council. The findings were that marijuana can cause lasting physical damage to users by altering and deforming chromosomes. He compares the effects as similar to those of cancer, which may take 30 to 40 years in developing a tumor. Symptoms listed. Studies of the chronic use of marijuana in India disclosed that 42% of the users studied had the following symptoms: congestion of the eyes, laryngitis, bronchitis, loss of weight, and depression of sexual activities, Dr. Gubar said. Dr. Souza, who joined the pair at the podium during the question and answer period, was asked, if marijuana causes such striking damage, why hasn't it shown up in such places as India, where it is widely used? Tests show that 30% of the children are born dead or die very soon after birth, and 60% of the persons develop damaged chromosomes causing, among other things, homosexuality, Dr. Souza said. Toward the end of the day's program, Dr. Benedict caused a stir when he declared probably 15 to 20% of the students here have used marijuana. Dr. Gubar said, I take exception to that statement unless you can show me statistics. Dr. Benedict answered, well, maybe this school is an exception. As the session ended, Dr. Benedict was asked where the line could be drawn between safe drugs and dangerous. Dr. Benedict answered by saying, it is hard to say. The government should set up the commission I suggested earlier. Each state should not have a separate ruling on these matters. End quote. So, according to Dr. Souza, 30% of babies of marijuana users are born dead, and marijuana can cause homosexuality as well. In another article titled, Essex Assemblyman Dennis Raps Lack of New Jersey Narcotics Program, Souza is quoted as saying of marijuana use, quote, no other disease has the tragic effect on chromosomes as has marijuana. The use of marijuana breaks down all 46 chromosomes, unlike even heroin. People claim that marijuana can't hurt you. It can, has, and severely affects future generations. End quote. Well, Souza, as a geneticist, which we will find out, he's not actually a geneticist, even though that's what he claimed to be. He's very interested in future generations, bloodlines, We've talked about that before. Look, I am not here to convince you that marijuana is good or bad, but I think almost all of us would agree that it is much less harmful than a lot of substances, especially heroin. The point really is, would you want this man hooking your child's brain up to machines to experiment on them with? Would you want this man doing any tests on your children? It took a while, but eventually the people of New Jersey decided they did not want that sort of thing to happen. First, an article from Patterson's newspaper The Morning Call, published Tuesday, November 18th, 1969. Before I read, I must note that the photos these articles contain of Dr. Souza are nightmarish. You can find them in the transcripts of this episode that I will post online. And it's especially creepy when you know the full extent of what he has done, which, we're getting to today, and we will even more in the future. Anyhow, reading now from that article, quote, Marijuana test inventor faces perjury action by Tom Sullivan, staff writer. Garfield. An arrest warrant was issued yesterday for the 56-year-old geneticist who says he invented a device to detect drug users. Dr. Luis Diaz de Souza was charged by Bergen County prosecutor Guy W. Calisi with committing perjury October 17th when he claimed to hold a Doctor of Medicine degree from the University of Montevideo. Dr. Souza was a state witness in a Superior Court narcotics case. The Uruguayan-born man is now in Hillcrest Hospital, Jamaica, New York, for treatment of an unspecified internal injury. End quote. Quick, I almost forgot. I almost forgot that little bit where he's checked into a hospital for an internal injury all of a sudden, before he flees. So, continuing. Quote, 4 days before he entered the hospital, November 11th, Souza severed his connection with biogenetic laboratories here. He was working with the research and testing lab to develop a test to detect marijuana in human saliva. Khaleesi has asked New York authorities to take Souza into custody as soon as the hospital releases him, and has said he will extradite if necessary. Khaleesi based his action on a letter received from the university saying Souza was not a member of the class he specified in listing his background. If the case goes to trial, a witness is expected to be flown from Uruguay to present records. The letter to Khaleesi noted that the university had received other inquiries about Souza, according one last June from the Morning Call. The development does not mean an end to the work being done by biogenetics to offer a test to detect marijuana in human saliva. The company invested considerable money in gas chromatograph, readout machine, and other equipment. It had been employing Souza to do research to perfect a test. The gaunt scientist first made headlines a year ago by claiming a high level of success with such a test. He had been interviewed by the Clifton Board of Education, which had sought verification of the system with the hope of introducing tests on a voluntary basis in secondary schools. Clifton police checked his credentials, including copies of documents and sworn translations of records purporting to be from the University of Montevideo. The same documents were noted by Khaleesi's office for recruiting Souza as an expert witness. We had adopted a wait-and-see attitude, Stanton M. Weiss, president of the Board of Education, said last night. Our police said school officials agreed a test was highly desirable. Parents overwhelmingly supported the idea. If these charges are proven correct, it will mean a great many sincere people were misled. Clifton Police Chief Joseph A. Nee said his department heard about the Souza test from other departments which had experienced some apparent success with it, and had used it briefly for study purposes, confirming on a blind basis facts already known about addicts. End quote. It is important to note here that while his medical degrees from Uruguay were not legitimate, he was from there, although I am very unsure if he was actually born there. In the future, we will be discussing German colonies in Uruguay prior to and during World War II. That will allow us to continue submarine talk, which I know I said I would be getting to in this episode, but research breakthroughs have changed things. That article was from late November 1969, and this next one is from Tuesday, December 2nd, 1969, in Passaic, New Jersey's The Herald News. Clifton Schools drop Souza. The Clifton Board of Education has withdrawn from the controversial Souza drug detection program, according to a letter sent to parents of the school children today. The letter, brought home by 13,000 school children, makes no direct reference to Dr. Luis Souza, but Stanton Weiss, president of the board, confirmed that the board was ending its affiliation with Souza and the biogenetics laboratory. The board statement held out hope that studies of body fluid drug detection tests provide encouragement that the use of a scientifically proven drug detection test will shortly be a reality. The board statement credited aggressive action of the press raising a flag of caution in the Souza matter. The Herald News, conducting an independent investigation, first raised doubts about the validity of the Souza saliva tests. Weiss said he was not ruling out the possibility of resuming negotiations with Souza. If he fits our definition of reliable, then the board would consider resuming talks with Souza, Weiss said. The board took its action in an executive session last night. Dr. Souza has been charged with perjury by Bergen County prosecutor Guy W. Calisi for the alleged false testimony he submitted in Superior Court on October 17th. Calisi had contended that Souza does not hold a Doctor of Medicine degree from the University of Montevideo, Uruguay. Souza is believed to have fled the country. The text of the letter from the school board follows, quote within quote, "Dear fellow parent, along with the desire to offer the best in education, the Clifton Board of Education has an equally deep concern for the health and happiness of your children and ours. In the few short years between toddler age and maturity, it is the goal of the school system to render assistance as you go about fulfilling your God-given task of molding the character and guiding the future of your children. Towards this end, and now more than ever, greater classroom emphasis is being placed on the subject of drug abuse. It is the intention of our schools to continue to expand instruction and broaden techniques in presenting facts and logic against the improper or unlawful use of drugs. However, it is reasonable to assume that the ultimate solution to the problem will not come from only one source. In joining with the efforts of the private citizen, the community, and the government, the Board of Education hopefully will share in developing ideas to wipe out this disease that most seriously affects the young. While working with education and rehabilitation, we have long sought methods of deterring the use of illegal drugs. Our hopes were raised and excitement created when high-ranking government authorities brought to our test a drug detection saliva test which could be used as part of a voluntary deterrent program. As a matter of routine, we asked for and received assurances from these same authorities as to the authenticity and accuracy of the test. End quote within quote, end quote. So, high-ranking government authorities recommended Dr. Souza's test to the Clifton, New Jersey Board of Education. Interesting. Let's continue with this letter to parents. Quote within quote, announcement of the program had the immediate effect of bringing into the open a problem which had long remained covered with uncertainty and incomplete disclosure. Exposure to the view of a concerned public, we believe, will bring about the desired end of this situation at a much faster pace. Solutions will only be found when many are seeking answers, and shadows will only be wiped away by the light generated from an aroused community. Further implementation of the saliva test was halted by a change in the corporate structure of the laboratory offering the facilities and the astute, aggressive action of the press raising a flag of caution. Today, many reliable and reputable firms, as well as the government, are accelerating studies of body fluid drug detection tests, and data currently being released continues to provide encouragement that the use of a scientifically proven drug detection test will shortly be a reality. In the meantime, however, recent developments with respect to the saliva test prompt this letter as we feel a position must be stated. Not one child has ever been the subject of any drug detection test, nor will we ever conduct any tests until its absolute reliability is assured. Your children will never be exploited, used, nor become the subject of any device which does not guarantee their safety and the protection of their rights. Our job is education, not incrimination. Our role is to aid home and community. Our duty is to examine the new, while continuing to work with the proven old. Our promise is to remain on solid ground while we decide our future course of action. Our endeavor will be to benefit from making the mistake of moving too fast. Finally, you have our assurances that we will keep you informed in advance of any contemplated action. Thank you for your cooperation and support. Very truly yours, Clifton Board of Education. Ratified by board action, December 1st, 1969. End quote within quote, end quote. A day later, Wednesday, December 3rd, 1969, Patterson's The Evening News published this article. Quote, Clifton School Board retreats on drug saliva test proposal. Clifton. In a rambling and defensive letter to the parents of the city's 13,000 public school children Tuesday, the Board of Education backed off temporarily from the controversial drug saliva test it proposed a few months ago. The action followed on the heels of a perjury charge being brought against the test inventor Luis de Souza and his flight to Brazil to escape prosecution. In the letter to parents, the board stated, end quote, we already read the letter, so let's skip forward. Quote, but on the other hand, the board did not rule out the possibility of using some tests someday to detect drug users among students by stating, today, many reliable and reputable firms, as well as the government, are accelerating studies of body fluid drug detection tests, and data currently being released continues to provide encouragement that the use of a scientifically proven drug detection test will shortly be a reality. End quote. They quote from the letter we just read in full, so let's skip to the end of that article. Resuming. Quote, the rest of the letter was a defense of how and why the board ever got involved with this Souza, and stated, we asked for and received assurances as to the authenticity and accuracy of this test. End quote. So this article also states they asked the government, high level of authority in the government, the letter said, about Souza's drug test, and we're told that it was great, awesome. I wish I could figure out who in the government, but that is something I will continue looking for. We should move on for now, because finally, there's an article which I will not read in full. It was published towards the end of February 1970. It mentions Souza fleeing to South America, the attempted extradition of him, and that all narcotics cases in which his testimony led to a conviction were being checked. So there you have it, folks. If you were listening, I know that was a lot of reading of newspaper clippings, but they helped us put together quite the story of a fraud doctor who got away with doing MK Ultra-esque experiments on kids for plenty of years. So, why is he important? Well, those experiments we were able to read about I described as MK Ultra-esque. But we are about to discover things that will allow the esque to be dropped from my statement. My friend Clouds helped me find what you are about to learn, so she will read the excerpts to us all. Quote,
my grandfather was an industrial engineer. I suspect that he and Dr. Souza and Dr. Curry worked on tracking the harmonics and frequencies of human brains as the boys grew at Dozier. They were looking for specific frequencies for communication use. For instance, we humans hear voices at 500 to 1500 hertz. The sound comes on our acoustic nerves. Dr. Souza did that kind of work. I have a memory of him puncturing my eardrum and putting something inside my ear with long forceps. I heard a new tone in my ear after that. I suspect I had a radio crystal implant tuned to a satellite activation frequency. When MK Ultra Project formed, they studied human brains. The space program was interested in growing unique radio crystals for frequency control and spying. They created tiny radio crystals and optic nerve crystals for brain implants. I believe that Dr. Souza spoke about acoustic studies in Vienna to the newspaper article, Somebody's Child. The brain experiments and the foster care experiments were part of larger social studies run by big universities. My grandfather held a sociology degree and master's degree from Washington University and St. Louis University. St. Louis University worked with the Jesuits, and they made hospitals with Catholic charities. Jesuits, the Masons, the English churches, and many interested groups. Many had pedophile-based agendas as frustrated homosexual men that wanted sons. One big agenda was control of the actual human body, like a programmable container. Homosexual people did not feel comfortable being gay in public in 1960 and 1970s. It took a lot of activism to introduce it as normal to society. I realized through painstaking research about the brainstem, hypnosis, acupuncture, and points for the mind control that there had been a huge program in Florida on genetics. This caused a secret shadow government to support satanic practices using foster care children for sexual blackmail. My foster CIA grandfather worked with industry and aerospace to develop computer to satellite systems. I think I was a human GPS tower in the very beginning of cell towers. However, this was covert and obviously done with orphans and unwanted children with no oversight. I believe that Dozier was connected to the CIA Sunland, and they worked with the Catholic charities and Jesuits on social experiments. These were very grotesque experiments and caused much unneeded pain to satisfy sadistic pedophiles from the CIA. My grandfather was not one of them, and I'm very grateful. Some kids were taken for temporal lobe implants. There was lots of research on the eyes and how we see. The scientists wanted to know how the eyes and ears are connected. They did lots of brain surgery, and we didn't have any parents to support us. Every one of us was terrified and mind-erased with handlers trained in military-grade hypnosis. We witnessed lots of gruesome experiments for technology. Lots of children died due to shock therapy in pressure chambers and attached to electrified leads. Whenever I stayed at Sunderland, I had terrors about the giant wood-burning furnace. Sometimes it smelled funny because lots of kids went there after they had surgery. The staff called it Hansel and Gretel. I called it a Holocaust furnace for kids. The space program was a huge source of pride for Floridians. In those days, we all tried to be excited about developing the very things that tortured us. They wanted to engineer children with high technology they could match to satellite rays as a space to human ground link. In my case, I was synced with satellite telemetry at an amusement park and recalibrated at the Space Center. I had radio crystals that could transmit the data to the satellite computers on rocket launches. The robotics show was always on time or reset from backstage computers. I helped sync the show to the satellites. These are my own photographs of rockets I worked on syncing. I took these photographs during the period I worked with NASA and the engineers in 1961 to 1974. I really was a space kid.
End quote. Just like my friend Wen said, slimy vapid people laughing, knee slapping, slap
such a country club.